Most common mistake that people make when they're learning how to do this is putting too much bacteria on the slide. You only want to have a very small amount, you want to have a very dilute amount, a very dilute concentration on your slide, because otherwise you just end up with so many bacteria on your slide that when you look at it under a microscope, it just looks like a blob. And it also, if you've got too many of them all in one spot, the stain doesn't rinse out like it should. So we want to have quite a dilute culture. The way that I normally do it, again there are quite a few different methods for this, is I'm going to sterilise this loop, although it's not totally necessary for the moment. And what I'm going to do first of all is take some water. I'm going to use distilled water just because if you don't use distilled water, then for this section, then you can end up with the minerals in the water being deposited in your slide, and they just look, it makes it not quite so clean. And I'm just going to take a loop full of water and put it onto the slide. So I end up with just a little tiny drop of water. I'm probably going to do this twice actually for each one. And put the drops just slightly apart from each other. Otherwise I'll end up picking up the first drop that I did. And then I'm going to sterilise my loop. And it is important to have a sterile loop for the next part, because I'm going to get my bacteria out of my tube, and I don't want to contaminate my lovely pure culture of E. coli. If it's a pure culture, we shall find out in a second. It's quite an old stock culture. I'm just going to give it a quick swirl to distribute the bacteria throughout the broth, and then using our aseptic technique, which we learned last week, flame the mouth of the tube, take a loop full of organisms and deposit them on the slide. Because my slide is not sterile, I'm then going to sterilise the loop once more. And take another loopful for the other slide. I'm doing 2 slides because sometimes it just doesn't work. So by doing 2, I'm maximising my chances of getting a good smear. Flame the mouth again, cap back on. And now I'm just going to spread out the bacteria and the water on the slide, on the centre of the slide, so that it's a nice thin film. It no longer needs to be sterile. So everything you do from now on doesn't need to be sterile. I'm going to sterilise the loop because there's bacteria on it. Alright, so I've now got my smear, and the next thing to do is fix the smear. And what this does is it has a twofold purpose. The first is that it kills the bacteria, and the second that it kind of just sticks them to the slide. And basically I'm going to pass it through the flame. Don't hold the slides in the flame, because then the slide gets really hot. You end up with burned bacteria, which don't look particularly good under a microscope, and you can crack the slide. It's actually best to do this by air drying the slides first, and then just passing it through the Bunsen burner a couple of times if you have the time, but I'm not going to do that today. I want to speed things up a little bit. You want it just to be warm to the touch, but not hot. I'm going to put that one down and start that one. You can see on my slide here it's just a little bit wet still. And now that it's drying, you can see much better where the bacteria are. What you tend to find is that if you, as I'm doing now, if you force dry it, you get rings which don't look great. You also end up with less of a concentration of bacteria on the outside, and it concentrates more as you go in, which can sometimes be a good thing if you have a very light culture, or a very light smear rather. Okay, those are dry. I no longer need this.